Welcome to the Art of Hitting Club. Hit subscribe before you forget. Thanks. Today we're going to talk about linear hitting and rotational hitting and how that affects the hitter and what we're talking about. We'll talk about kinetic energy. And to be honest with you, full disclosure, 77 years old, been playing softball 57 years. Never thought 2 minutes about linear hitting or rotational hitting. When asked the question, what does that mean? I would have probably said, well, linear means going forward, rotation means rotating. That's my redneck logic anyhow. So I've done about 3 or 4 hours of study on the internet, gone through a lot of people. I'm going to show some videos, clips of major league ball players, softball players, to further the discussion. But today what I want to do is, this morning actually, is to talk to the group about what they know about rotational and linear hitting, and what do we expect to accomplish. Just knowledge, and then when you train, you should train for rotational hitting. There's ways to increase that energy. We're dealing with kinetic energy, and I had a long talk with Bob O'Brien, I consider him an expert on the subject because he studied it a lot. I've studied it for 4 or 5 hours now, and that's about the extent of my studying. But Bob is I call him an expert on it. He knows his stuff. Was a coach for 30, 40 years. Great ball player. Yeah. I use him as a source, along with a lot of other great ball players I know, Paul Stanley, Bob Waldyke, Bruce Mead. I can go on, Mike Masenko, hell, I mean. But most of those guys, we grew up in the era, we just got out there and swung the bat and hit it, you know. I just realized that javelin throwing has some kinship to linear power, generating linear power with the javelin. If you're a good javelin thrower, it's similar to swinging a bat. Won't go into that, and we won't go into physics, because if we stayed on the physics end of it, I seen the equations, and I didn't even take physics. Can't even say it. I did not take it in high school. I didn't take it in college. And I'm glad I didn't, because I probably wouldn't have passed. Okay, well, enough of that. Yeah, I'm going to show you some swings of the major league players and a guy named Antonelli that talks about, the dilemma they're having in baseball today, where a lot of coaches are coaching just rotational hitting with not much focus on linear, but they're both important. As you see in this slide, the kinetic energy is generating. That's your goal as a hitter, is to generate energy to supply the power and transfer it to your bat. And that energy is going to come up, starts at your legs, are going to come up and goes through your body, your core, and your rotation. That's where you pick up a lot of energy, and then the snap, and we'll get into that some. But there's major league players that when they leave the game of baseball, come to softball, they got a transition period, and it's not just as simple as just picking up the bat and start swinging. They're going to pop up a lot. But let's go through this, and hopefully it's interesting. We picked out I cherry-picked certain clips that will help you understand. Hey, we're going to talk about linear hitting and rotation. What do you guys know about that? If I ask you, what's the difference between linear hitting and rotational hitting?
Stride and rotations with the hips.
All right.
Straight line.
So what are we trying to do with what you're saying then, this is linear because it's moving forward, right?
Correct.
That's my redneck logic. That's what I thought too. To be honest with you, when I played 57 years, somebody had asked me that, which they did, and I would have said, yeah, linear's going forward, rotational's rotating, right? Pretty much all you need to know as a softball player. But actually, I've done 3 or 4 hours of study, but I talked to Bob O'Brien yesterday for 45 minutes, and he clarified it very well. He's a very good instructor. I go to him all the time to get in depth, check me out, see if I'm thinking right. But so what we're trying to do as a hitter is to generate kinetic energy, right? And what was a bulb that went off in my head, an epiphany, if you will, is that, so linear and rotational has been around since day one. I got a lot of Mickey Mantle, and everybody had this big stride, and they came around like this. And so this is the linear, and this is the rotational, like we said. Now, what does that mean to a regular softball player? What it means.
Turn.
Yeah, but what are they trying to do? What they're trying to do is take the power from the ground that you got with your legs. That's why ball players have big legs, big asses, because this is where the main part of the power comes from. So if I asked you in the swing, what percentage, obviously 100% total of this whole movement is the linear movement and then the rotational movement, you separate them, what's the percentage that the linear will do for your swing, generating power, and what's the percentage for the rotation? Any guess? Just guess. Nobody's going to know that.
It's like 60-40.
60-40, that's close. It's 15-85.
On the rotation.
15, no. Which one do you think is the most important?
The rotation.
Rotation. And the aha moment I had talking to Bob is that when you're stepping forward like this, okay, in the linear movement, that's 15%. But now, when you start to load and you stop, when this goes down, you stop, and that energy, visualize, is coming up through here. So what's going to happen when it hits your core? What's going to happen? There's energy coming up, and when you do this, your core, if it's strong, it's going to increase that energy. So that's where you're getting your power, along with the speed of the bat.
That's what's wrong with me. I have too much.
You could still no, but you got mass. You got mass.
I got mass.
There's
I
a
have muscle.
freaking equation that I watched this guy do this. It's called quantum physics. I think I don't know, but I got lost. But the point is, what it's doing is increasing. The stronger your core makes the power, the energy coming up, the kinetic energy coming up.
That's why I can't.
Makes it more, right? Increases the energy because you're coming around, and then the speed. The bottom line is that if you work on your core, you're working on 85% of your production of your swing. Now you still need that 15% because it could be the difference between hitting one out or hitting it. As an older guy, it's more about
Hits it out.
So does that make sense, Steve?
Yes, it does. Yes. So I need to work on my core.
Well, everybody needs to work on their core.
I heard I need to gain weight.
But I'm any comments, any questions? I mean, does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah. Your hips are a big part of the weight moving.
Yeah, and
gives you the whip.
And getting all that to come through and stem,
You won't hit.
Huh?
Strike
How's that? Huh?
Yeah.
Hey, I used to hit left. You remember when I used to hit left hand? Not a bad swing, bro.
Three levels.
Yeah. Your core needs a little work though, but that's all right.
My core.
Hey, the ball only went 2 feet too.
I'm going to have some clips of major league ball players swinging the bat, just to show you the relationship. Now, obviously in baseball, you got that 90-mile-an-hour ball coming at you, and you have less of a chance to be successful when you make a mistake. In softball, I don't know what the ball's coming at 5 miles an hour. So the whole idea in softball is you want to generate as much kinetic energy as you can transferring through your body, and we're going to talk about that. So yeah, softball, it requires you to generate more of your own power.
Talks about rotational hitting. They don't make any linear moves, so they basically will get in the box, they'll load and get their weight on their back leg, and then they'll just spin, and there's no drive off the back leg, there's no real transfer of weight and they're really spinny hitters. They just kind of spin and turn, and what they do is they end up pulling a lot of balls. Their hands get out away from them. They'll pull a lot of ground balls, they'll get around a lot of balls, or they'll pop up a lot to the opposite field because they're cutting across the strike zone with their bat head. And when I'm working with these players and I kind of try to talk to them about how they need to get a little bit of a linear component into the swing, they need to get a drive off the back foot, they need to transfer their weight a little bit better. And a lot of times these players will say, no, because hitting is rotational and I have to just rotate. And that's kind of what I'm after today, is just to kind of show players that think in that way, that even if you believe in rotational hitting and rotational mechanics, there's a linear move to those mechanics. If you watch any good major league player, what they're going to do is, and they all do it slightly different, but for the most part, they're going to get in their stance, they're going to stride and separate, they're going to drive off their back foot, get a little bit of back leg drive. So they're going to move their body as one piece. They're going to keep the head in the middle of their body, and they're going to move their body towards the pitcher. And it happens in every single hitter. No matter who you look at, they're going to move. Some move more than others. Some have bigger strides than others. Some have no stride. But they still do this where they're moving their body towards the pitcher.
Tell us about the swing that you witnessed in Cincinnati for so many years.
Who didn't want to swing like Ken Griffey Jr.? I mean, just the sweetest swing you could ever ask for in the game of baseball in the history. And you take a look at it and you break it down and see why was he so good? What did he do so well? When I think of Griff too, you know, like I said, having played 6 years with him, there was not a ballpark where he couldn't go to right field, to left center, and this is what he called grown folks territory, dead center. He loved going to grown folks territory because he used to stay through the ball so well. Watch the stretch he gets here, Smoltzy. Look at that stretch, that bow and arrow effect, that stretch, and then watch. His core was so stinking strong, his elbow rode back, and look at the backside, how it stays so compact, head down through the ball with that one-hand finish. Listen, as a hitter, you have to have that flexibility. If you have the guys that have that real good flexibility up here that can get all the way back here, that's tough to do. He got that stretch where he would get that tension here, and then he would just unload it. And listen, this guy's core was as strong as anyone in the game. I truly believe that's the reason he was so good, because he would get the stretch, like that bow and arrow effect, and then he would just unload it. He would step, and then watch the connection he would get here. This back elbow would ride down, and this is where he was so strong and different from everyone else, and the vision that he had, and then bam, he closed that door. And when he'd catch balls out front, he wasn't catching them out here, he was catching them right here with all the power of that core, and that bam, that beautiful top hand finish. It was the thing of beauty.
Did it evolve over time, or did
The important thing I want you to remember in the two clips I just showed you, that linear and rotational have to work together for the most part. And what the gentleman said, the announcer in the MLB, talked about how powerful Ken Griffey was with his stretch and his load. Now that's really that's a focus for a softball player too. The stretch and the load is very significant into how well you're going to hit the ball, and that's very important. Now we're going to go into the softball players and see what they do, and you can compare that. There's some similarities and there's a lot of difference. Remember, you got to generate your own power in softball.
Hey, what's going on? It's Joey Myers from the Hitting Performance Lab, and I'm doing another article for SwingSmarter.com all around the Mick, or Mickey Mantle. In this video, we're going to compare Mickey Mantle's swing to another explosive rotational Olympic athlete, the javelin throwing event. So the parallels that we're going to draw, we're talking about the principles of explosive rotational power. As some of you might know or have read, my stuff is all about that principles are few, methods are many. And if we don't have the principles and we just look at methods, which you find a lot of methods on YouTube, just videos of drills and mindless drills, if you don't grasp the principles of explosive rotational power, you're going to be lost. So the two basic principles we're going to compare here between Mickey Mantle and Jan, who's the Olympic world record holder in the javelin throw, we're going to look at forward momentum and this idea of the catapult loading system, or this springy material that it comes from myofascial and connective tissue in our body, and it closely resembles the jumping kangaroo or the endless bounding gazelle. Now with Mickey Mantle, I really wanted to look at his swing because I thought he was a bigger guy than he was. He's actually only 5'11". He was 5'11", 195 pounds. Very, very small guy compared to today's standards. And he's got the longest official recorded home run in baseball history. And the reports range from 650 feet all the way up to 720 feet. Who knows, but 650-foot shot, anything over 600, even to round down to 600 feet is an absolute shot, especially for a guy who only weighed 195 pounds and was only 5'11". So let's jump right into it. A couple clips might run through of Mickey Mantle. This is him batting right-handed. Of course, those of you know Mickey Mantle was a switch hitter. And what we're going to do is let's look at him in slow-mo. Those of you that saw the Babe Ruth video, definitely a little different setup that Mickey's got over the Babe. The Babe had his feet were basically together, but the principle's the same. He takes his foot, picks it up. He's in a good athletic stance, so he's got a nice angle here with his back leg. It's not his back knee is not floating over his foot. He's got a nice angle, and what that's going to help him do is once he picks his foot up, it's going to allow his hips to fall forward. It's just a relaxed motion. He just picks the foot up and just lets it fall forward. Even reaches out a little bit with it to get a little bit more of his momentum coming forward. The basic idea and premise here is Mickey Mantle is trying to get this bat to unweight. He's trying to unweight this bat. Get it to where no matter how heavy of a bat that he swung, or like Babe Ruth swung, he's trying to get it to where it's unweighted, and he does that with his forward momentum. You're going to see the same thing with the javelin thrower, Jan the javelin thrower. But you see that him just pick that foot up, let the hips fall forward, and like I said, even reaches out with that front foot a little bit. See that? The other thing, the catapult loading system. Now that's a unique piece of equipment that we have that most people don't know about that are in the baseball, softball industry, fathers, instructors, is what we're seeing is in explosive rotational movement. One of the major principles is that there's this, imagine this X. This all comes from Thomas Myers' study on his 30-plus years of study on out of his book Anatomy Trains. For those that want to read up a little bit more and dig into the biomechanics of it, it's very thick textbook material. It is, for those that are familiar with some of the information with biomechanics, you probably be able to. It's a little easy to read for you. But what you see is this X pattern that happens from the front shoulder to the back hip and the back shoulder to the front hip, both front and back. Just imagine this X coming across here. Each leg of the X has to either shorten. If one side shortens, the other side lengthens. So with Mickey Mantle in his right-handed swing, you're going to see his front shoulder is going to come towards his back hip, and you're going to see this back shoulder move away from his front hip. And that's what you're going to see. And on the back side, it's the opposite. So if the front shoulder is moving in towards the front shoulder, the front hip are moving closer together, opposite hip, then the same shoulder back to the back hip are going to be moving away from each other. So it's this compressing, using these tension and compression forces inside the body of myofascia and connective tissue that gives us this spring-like material that you see in jumping kangaroos or bounding gazelles. And then what you'll see is most of the work of loading the spring is done by the time his front foot hits. Then from there, it's all the counteraction of loading that spring, or loading that catapult, as I like to call it, the catapult loading system. So with the combination of forward momentum and the catapult loading system, you see the Mick, not a very big guy, but he hits like a big guy, killing the ball. So let's look at the same principles involved. I'm going to put this in slow motion and loop it, of Jan, our javelin thrower, world record javelin thrower. As you see, let me slow it down a little bit more. As you see, he's running forward. Obviously, We can't do this as a hitter. We can't run towards the pitcher. We can't even do like a hammer throw and take our eyes off our target. Just think that this is a different event to where they're trying to throw an object as far as they can out into a field, a football field. With hitting, what we're trying to do is we're not throwing the object we have in our hand, but we're trying to hit an object coming at us. So a little different, but you're going to see the principles are the same. So you see the forward momentum being built. Right here, Jan, he can't step over that front line or else he's going to get disqualified, that white line here, right? But what you see is this forward momentum. Here's a white line here. He can't go over. Forward momentum, and then we're going to slow it down and try and see if we can see the opening and closing of this catapult loading system. So as he's taking his steps and he's getting ready to launch it, you can see that front shoulder has closed in towards the back hip. And then as he begins to open up, you see it open. Okay, you see, let's back it up one more. Here, so we got the shoulders coming towards the back hip. This front hip and the back shoulder are moving away from each other, and you'll see this reverse as he goes to launch. You can see, if I back it up one, you can see all that catapult loading system firing forward along with all that momentum that he's building as he runs. Like I said, looks a little different to hitting, but the same principles are the same.
You know, I put that clip in there about Mickey Mantle because I thought it was fascinating for a couple of reasons. The analogy between the javelin throwing and the hitting, the linear hitting concept. And I remembered that Bruce Meade didn't play baseball in high school, but he threw the javelin. He was the best. He was the best home hitter of our era. He was the Babe Ruth of our era. So I thought it was pretty amazing, and I thought there's things in there you can learn. The concept of Mickey being only 5'11" and having a lot of power. And there are things doing softball that you know, you can take all these things that you're looking at, and that's the art of slow pitch softball. You can take those. You got to have fundamental principles. You got to do some of the things that will give you a good swing. But let's go. We'll talk about Kyle Peterson here. Kyle Pearson. Look at this. He's got a very unique softball approach. He lifts that leg. He loads. If you look at the load, I mean that's a great load, and he's a big old man. See, he comes down and everything's just right. If you go back to you'll see the Major League Baseball players. They have that the footwork, the leg work is similar, but it's just it's amazing to me how everybody has their own approach, but they do a lot of things the same way. And you can notice it while you're observing. Now we're going to watch a little more with Kyle and look at this swing, and then we're going to go to a couple of other guys. Well, actually, Paul Stanley. Then we'll work a few slides of back when I was 55 in there, and then we'll go to some older guys, my buddies from the Venom team. I don't know Kyle's age. I'm assuming he's in his early 50s. We're going to move on to older players now. And some of my buddies like Paul Stanley. We're going to go watch Paul Stanley, see some clips from, my days, just to give you the different variations in swings.
And the pitch.
Paul's one of the greats today. Boy, he's got a fast bat. You can hardly see that bat go around. He hit that way out of the Vera Stadium. Now watch his bat. I think we got this one in slow motion, if I'm not mistaken. No. Yeah. He just has a great swing. It's a nice swing. Next clip is one from Bogey, who did an evaluation of my swing, saying I left too much power on the table, but as an old man, I could hit it farther.
Baseball great Ted Williams always said the tool in an athlete's hand is the last thing to leave. And I'm always amazed as I reach 69 of how much power is still attainable by seniors. Ed Rose here has been a premier player for 57 years and maybe won more world titles than anyone else at the Major Plus level. He's now 77, along with my buddy Steve Imlay, who's 74. We're working on what we can do to see about getting maybe 5 to 10 more mile-an-hour exit speed, maybe more home runs.
Now I'm going to critique myself. You look at my swing and you watch this. I'm getting everything. I'm turning, I'm rotating, making that energy all into the bat, and I do it quick. I have a really quick and short swing, and my style was generated that. You look at that. I've rotated my hips fully open. I consider that, good job by the old man. Well, I wasn't an old man there. I was actually 55. And I enjoy putting this picture in here because, damn, I looked all right back then. I look like an old dude now. 55 wasn't bad. It's only 22 years ago. But I don't do that with my legs anymore. I'm trying different ways. That's why I'm trying that leg kick. I'm trying different things, trying to just stay active and not really hit a home run, but to drive the ball. As long as I can drive the ball, if I hit those gaps in the older divisions, that's a big deal. Then I'll have to start running more. So running, there's a lot of guys that don't hit the ball really hard. They hit it where they ain't. And that's the key to old-timers ball. And I'm going to have some of those swings here towards the end. Let's watch our leadoff hitter of the Venom team, Jimmy Davison. He has his step, and his deal is that he hits it where they're not. He doesn't hit it particularly hard. He hits it sharp, and he hits it where they're ain't. He bats 750, 850 every tournament. Bruce Fairchild now is our power hitter. Look at his step, turn. He's still got great bat speed. He still hits it pretty deep. He leads us in home runs mostly every tournament. And the big feature here is our bats. Our bats are a lot different. Now here's Vance. He's one of our best hitters on the team. He drives the gaps a lot. He's got a nice step, stride, comes around, rotates, does all the things right. He's still swinging pretty much like he used to back in the day. Now we got this guy, Eddie Rose. Now you might watch my old swing. Watch this. You see how much different it is. There's not the same leg movement. I'm still powering the ball pretty good, but I don't. My angle on my bat swing is more level than I used to have a slight uppercut. You watch it, I'll come around. Now I like the high pitch because I keep it up and I can hit the high pitch out. So there's a sample of the old guys swinging. So let's recap. You know now that 15% of your swing is linear and 85% is rotational for most players. So if you want to improve, you look at what exercise you can do that will improve your linear part of your swing, and what exercise you need to improve your rotational side of your swing. Now we'll be putting out exercises that will identify where it helps your linear or rotational muscles. So look for that. We have a couple of videos out already with John Ferrani doing TRX and Dan Carlson doing some of his gym work. Now remember, there's another element to you got linear hit and rotational hitting, and the one thing that people don't talk about a lot is the equipment. The equipment is important because nowadays the bat kind of makes you better than you really are, if we tell the truth. And remember, the key is timing, technique, and technology. You got to put that timing, technique, and technology to work. Hey, hit subscribe. I hope you enjoyed it. Hold on, man. Did you hit subscribe? Hit subscribe, buddy.